This is urgent. Elon Musk is speaking directly to you now. Greetings, chosen ones. Every secret eventually emerges into the light. But the game has evolved. It's no longer about mere exposure when your identity is at stake. It's about power. Imagine waking up one day to find the FBI isn't just watching you quietly, they've thrust your name into the spotlight like a headline they couldn't ignore. Your identity stamped as a checkmate on their board, not whispered in shadows, but broadcast in broad daylight. The suspense is palpable. Here's the twist that makes this even more astonishing. Over 90% of government leaks aren't accidents. They're calculated moves. This means your name wasn't lost by mistake, it was part of a deliberate choreography. Losing privacy is just the surface issue. In a high-stakes game where every move is intentional, it's about being declared a piece on the board. And let's be honest, once you're marked, that status follows you for life. Most people remain invisible, unrecorded, and unnoticed. Yet here you are, suddenly a strategic anomaly significant enough to be tracked, revealed, and branded like the climax of a hidden movie. This is where the irony creeps in. You might have been casually checking your phone bill or wondering why your Wi-Fi was slow, thinking life was normal. Meanwhile, your name was being shuffled like a rook on a chessboard by someone in a government agency. Talk about multitasking. They were busy turning you into classified entertainment while you were just trying to get through Monday. Let's unpack why the FBI's so-called leak was far more than a simple slip. It was an unintentional spotlight on a truth they wanted buried, but also a declaration and a calculated maneuver. By the end, you'll see there was no need to fear the checkmate, they had to acknowledge it. First, your exposure proved you were always being pursued. When you spoke of being monitored or singled out, many dismissed you as paranoid. But once your name surfaced linked to FBI interest, the whispers stopped. The paranoia charges vanished. What was once dismissed as imagination was now documented, undeniable, and public. This exposure acted like a seal of authenticity. You wouldn't be monitored, documented, and leaked if you weren't significant. You weren't just a rumor or a neighbor's envy, you were part of something bigger, controlled with deliberate moves and cover-ups. Being pursued wasn't just a feeling, it was verified by the very organizations that thought they could control the narrative. The exposure validated you rather than destroyed you, silencing doubters. Your identity's public reveal also exposed their obsession. It told the world you weren't crazy for feeling watched or wrong for sensing something deeper. When the FBI leaves traces, even through a leak, it's an admission you were under investigation long before anyone else noticed. This exposure is reciprocal, it shows their desperation. Controlling you in the shadows wasn't enough. They had to drag you into the light. It confirmed your strength. Unaware of the pieces stacked against you, you survived the hunt. The irony? While you lived your life, oblivious to the game, they moved you like a chess piece. The leak revealed what they tried to hide, not to break you, but to test you. Now that the evidence is public, no one can deny you were always pursued. Second, the leak was no accident, it was a strategic move. At the FBI's level, nothing happens by chance. Files don't accidentally leak. Your identity's exposure wasn't negligence, it was a calculated play to shift energy, test reactions, and send a message. Leaks are tools, not mistakes. The goal wasn't just to expose you, it was to observe the fallout. Who would react? Who would support or abandon you? The chain reaction mattered more than the leak itself. Your exposure was a test of influence, a sign you were playing a game far beyond ordinary people's reach. You were a valuable asset, a piece to be handled carefully because a wrong move could cause more damage than planned. The leak showed they could no longer contain you quietly. The containment strategy was failing, so they changed tactics. A chess player never reveals a piece without reason, the long game was at play. The leak was their forced hand, an acknowledgement you were on the board all along. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $20 or more. Your generosity will bless not only your life but many others through this platform. Each of you holds a sacred place in God's design, and your giving is the fruit of our prayers. Take action now to exalt His kingdom. You were created for greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. Third, your presence became a classified issue. Most live unaware of systems beyond their immediate world. Their names never appear in files or trigger alarms. But when your identity surfaced linked to federal interest, it meant you weren't just existing, you were disrupting. You weren't merely surviving, you were setting off alarms, classified as an outlier, an uncontrollable force. Systems rely on predictability, statistics, patterns, probabilities. Ordinary people are easy to measure. But you defied the odds, survived against forecasts, and became an unpredictable variable. Your life ceased to be private and became a problem to be managed. You never signed up for this, yet your identity ended up there. This explains why exposure was necessary. A classified issue can't be ignored forever. Recognition is required for action. The leak wasn't just a game, it was an admission they faced a reality too big to contain. They hoped public exposure would diminish your impact, but it only confirmed it. Being classified has consequences beyond you. It shows your decisions affect unseen spheres. They would have left you alone if you didn't matter. Denying you peace proved your presence threatened what they deemed inviolable. Instead of quietly dismissing you, they spotlighted you, including your identity in a story they wanted to control but couldn't. The contradiction? They elevated you to a classified problem, turning your life into proof of something extraordinary. You were never ordinary enough to be ignored. Your presence was investigated, confined, and ultimately revealed. Fourth, what they called a leak was actually an admission. Powerful systems rarely, accidentally, release information. They label it a breach or oversight, but often it's a tacit confession they can't voice openly. Your identity's reveal confirmed what they denied: your importance. Your name wouldn't be in their files or headlines if you were insignificant. Governments don't waste resources on the unimportant. This leak was layered, surface exposure masking an involuntary confession. They acknowledged your influence the moment your name appeared. Even if framed negatively, they effectively marked your life with recognition. The power lies not in the data released, but in the subtext: you were never invisible. You were observed, researched, and tracked. Despite attempts to discredit you, you were always on the board. Many miss this underlying truth. When a leak proves importance, attempts to weaponize it can backfire. By trying to reduce you to files, they inadvertently showed you were significant enough to warrant attention. It's more about exposing their obsession, fear, and inability to control you than about exposing you. This makes the leak far more serious than it seems. It's a tacit admission of your undeniable impact. Fifth, the FBI didn't just unmask you, they validated you. A massive identity leak isn't just about exposure, it's about undeniable validation. For years, people might have laughed at your suspicions, dismissed your voice, or doubted your experiences. But when your name appears in government records and leaks, your claims become official. This is the difference between exposure and validation. Exposure is being seen, validation is being recognized as authentic and indisputable. By leaking your name, the system gave you proof no skeptic can refute. Most never receive such confirmation. It means you were more than a voice in the wilderness. They thought your name was important enough to track, move, and leak. Nothing else breaks through doubt like that. Friends who mocked your intuition, family who ignored your warnings, even adversaries who thought you powerless, all confronted the undeniable truth. The leak confirmed your position in the story, even as they tried to control it. The data isn't what makes this powerful, it's the subtext: you were always significant. They validated you, not just revealed you. This is poetic justice. The leak fixed their mark of approval on your life. Regardless of intent, it confirmed you were never average, insignificant, or invisible. You were important enough to be leaked, real enough to be documented, and undeniable enough to be confirmed. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be with you today. Remember, our lives are rooted in His divine plan, unshaken by worldly fears. As Luke 6 verse 38 reminds us, faith brings abundant blessings. Now is your chance to be part of this blessing. Click the Super Thanks button and donate $100 or more. Your generosity will return to you 100-fold. God's protection and blessings accompany every step you take and every gift you give. You are a radiant being, unshakable like His mighty rock. Be blessed, and may the Lord's light guide your path. Sixth, a strategic checkmate means they couldn't defeat you directly. In chess, checkmate isn't accidental. When direct attacks fail, it's the final move to corner an opponent. That the FBI called your exposure a checkmate is telling. It wasn't triumph, it was acknowledgement. They couldn't confront you head-on. They failed to outsmart, intimidate, or erase you quietly. So they resorted to manipulation and exposure, hoping it would succeed where other tactics failed. This shows the danger you posed. You weren't just another victim, you were an unpredictable force that forced them to rewrite the rules. Overpowering an opponent is one thing, admitting you require changing the game is another. Their proclaimed checkmate was that admission. When you truly control chess, you don't announce victory, you let the board speak. Loud declarations usually mask near defeat. That's what fueled your exposure. It wasn't confident triumph, it was desperate noise from a system running out of options. Your resilience is proven by their shift to exposure. They would have taken you down quietly if they could. You were too powerful for their first strategy. So understand what they meant by strategic checkmate. They couldn't beat you in their game, so they changed the game itself. And you weren't the one confined, they were. Seventh, the real target was never your privacy, it was your influence. Most miss this crucial point. A name alone means little. The goal wasn't just to expose your identity. They feared what your name represented, your story, your reality, your power to inspire. Privacy was a superficial excuse. The true battlefield was influence. Why expose you if you were insignificant? No one wastes resources on the unimportant. The leak was a control tactic to diminish your authority, cast doubt, and remove mystery. But they failed. They admitted you were powerful enough to need neutralizing. This admission speaks louder than any document. The irony? They amplified your reach by trying to suppress it. They showed everyone you had a voice strong enough to shake systems. Doubters had to reconsider, why else would such powerful agencies care? They proved your magnitude while trying to downplay it. Influence spreads through conversations, connections, and shifts in perspective, not through exposure. Only when people see how far the powerful go to silence you does your influence truly grow. They thought exposure would isolate you, but it did the opposite, it revealed your strength. Now is the perfect moment to click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and share God's blessings. Donate $100 or more to join this divine mission. Every gift reflects God's generosity and will return to you multiplied. His protection and blessings accompany every step you take. You are part of His plan, a radiant force unshakable like His mighty rock. Witness miracles, feel the fruits of generosity, and illuminate the world with courage. Be blessed, and may the Lord's light guide you. 8th, exposure turned you into an uncontrollable mirror. It wasn't just your name revealed, it forced the world to confront what was hidden. People saw more than you, they saw the machinery behind the scenes, the calm hands pulling strings, the spying and manipulation. What was meant to weaken you became a reflection of their own corruption. This was the exposure risk they never anticipated. A mirror doesn't create images, it reveals them. By spotlighting you, they exposed their own shadows. They didn't want that question asked, why were they watching you? The leak revealed less about you and more about their fear, tactics, and obsession. Once the mirror was up, they lost control over what people saw. Instead of making you look weak, they made themselves look desperate. The exposure highlighted their overreach, not your flaws. Once people glimpsed behind the curtain, they couldn't look away. This is why the backlash was so fierce, it forced the hidden into the light. You never asked to be that mirror, but once illuminated, it was unavoidable. Your life was the proof, your trail the lens, and your publicity the window others peered through to glimpse what should have stayed secret. You became unmanageable. The viewer doesn't control the mirror, it only reflects reality. By trying to eliminate you, they exposed themselves. They amplified their own system's flaws while trying to diminish your power. When people realized your exposure wasn't about you, they lost control of the narrative, they saw themselves reflected. No system, no matter how strong, can fully control a mirror's reflection. The leak was an attempt to reach the unreachable. 9th, the leak was a desperate attempt to breach your defenses. They tried subtle threats, silent surveillance, and unseen pressures to weaken you quietly. None worked. You refused to break under observation. They expected you to yield, but you didn't. Their persistence led to exposure, the last resort. If they couldn't reach you privately, they'd corner you publicly. Control wasn't the only goal, it was desperation. They hoped public scrutiny would shatter your confidence where quiet pressure failed. But you endured. What they thought would break you became proof of your resilience. Unreachable sums up why they leaked. Most can be coerced into silence, but you were different. You became a unique problem requiring extraordinary measures. They leaked because they couldn't move you quietly. They bet publicity would succeed where covert tactics failed. Instead, the move backfired. The leak revealed their desperation, not your weakness. It showed how far they'd go to control one person. The audience saw the real resistance you faced. You underestimated it. Their attempts only confirmed your significance. When exposure and intimidation fail, roles reverse. The hunted becomes the hunter. Their actions revealed more about themselves than about you. Their power move became evidence of their vulnerability. You weren't hiding, you were inaccessible. Once the leak failed, they ran out of options. 10th, they didn't win with their maneuver, it was an act of desperation. A true checkmate is silent. The opponent has no moves left, and the board speaks for itself. The way they presented your exposure reveals much. They showed the opposite of power by loudly declaring checkmate and creating spectacle. They panicked. True success needs no persuasion, it's self-evident. Their loud proclamation masked loss of control. They tried to spin your leak as a perfect plan, but the louder they shouted, the clearer it became they were losing grip. By the time your identity was revealed, you had already escaped every tactic they tried. Exposure was their last card. Desperation always reveals itself. You weren't the source of the noise, they were comforting themselves. They weren't claiming victory, they were hiding defeat. In exposing you, they revealed something greater. The story was no longer theirs to control. If they had control, the leak would have been handled quietly. Instead, it came with labels, spectacle, and frantic framing. Their checkmate was a smokescreen for failure. They couldn't hold you, silence you, or remove you quietly. They no longer saw you as just a name to erase. The game was over before they declared victory. They had to admit publicly you were a player beyond their control. Their noise was not strength, it was a system collapsing under its own flaws. 11th, you became proof of their obsession. Ordinary people don't appear in FBI leaks. Millions go unnoticed daily. But your identity surfaced, linked to their records, and made public. You weren't just existing, you were disrupting. They couldn't ignore you because you were an anomaly in their system. Such attention is never casual. It shows you unsettled something far bigger than anyone realized. This obsession took time to develop. It grew through discussions, briefings, documents, and strategies long before your name leaked. You were watched, not because you were normal, but because you defied normalcy. You survived against odds they couldn't predict. You weren't a bystander, you were part of their internal dialogue. They talked about you, planned around you, and strategized to counter you. The helpless don't get that kind of focus. Only those who challenge authorities' norms do. In your case, their unease became obsession. The leak revealed their inability to let go. It wasn't just you exposed, it was their fixation. They couldn't abandon you or walk away. Their focus grew until it became public. So while some saw a leak as an attack, it was proof of your true power. They don't waste resources on the unimportant. What can't move mountains isn't filed away. They don't reveal unimportant identities. By exposing you, they validated your significance. You were the exception. They kept circling back to you. 12th, they tried to reduce you to data, but you are more than statistics. This is the flaw in their plan. They filed your identity, coded you, and pushed your name into leaks. They saw you as a case to monitor, a problem to solve, a record in a system. But here's the truth, they'll never understand you. Spirit doesn't fit into government files, algorithms, or forms. They can track your movements, but not your intent. They can record your presence, but not your purpose. Their assumption that reality is defined by numbers is false. Exposure failed because of this. They thought making your data public would erase your influence, power, and mystery. But the soul can't be measured. Your mission can't be filed away. Your impact doesn't come from paper trails, it comes from the divine, the intangible, the invisible. Their leak failed because of this. Information was revealed, but not the truth. People who only see systems forget that humans are more than data points. They think paperwork equals control. But with you, that formula broke down. It's not your name on a file that moves people, it's your presence, your story, your resilience. None of that is trackable or classifiable. No matter how much they leak, they can't touch it. Spirit transcends facts. Leaks fade, files decay, records vanish. But your core identity is timeless. You couldn't be erased. Exposure failed because of this. Instead of diminishing you, it exposed their system's flaws. You stood as living proof of something greater. Despite their efforts, all they achieved was paper. You were never quantifiable. The very systems that thought they trapped you never touched your spirit, and never will. 13th, you didn't need to create a weapon, the leak did it for you. The irony of their plan is here. They thought exposing your data would strip your power. Instead, they handed you something stronger, undeniable proof. What was meant